The Lord of the Rings book trilogy, which is in fact not a trilogy, but one book split into 3 parts to help sales, was written over the span of 12 years by JRR Tolkien. It was completed in 1948, but was not officially published until 1954. He had written The Hobbit in 1932, and his publisher asked him to please write a sequel, so he wrote The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien was born in 1892 in South Africa and died in 1973 in England. He spent most of his life as a professor in different universities. He had created an Elvish language and started developing a world where the language could be used, inspired by Norse and Celtic mythology. Essential characters in the Fellowship of the Ring are the 9 members of the Fellowship, who start Frodo off on his mission to destroy the ring after meeting in Rivendell halfway through the book. Bilbo Baggins is an old hobbit who hasn't aged since he disappeared years ago without warning to go on an adventure. He returned from his adventure with unbelievable riches. Gandalf the Grey is an old wizard friend of Bilbo's. The people at Hobbiton, however, only know him for his fireworks and party tricks. Frodo Baggins is Bilbo's cousin, who Bilbo chooses as his heir. After his parents died, Bilbo took him in. When Bilbo leaves, Frodo inherits all of his riches, including the ring. Samwise Gamgee is Frodo's loyal servant and best friend. He ends up going with Frodo on his adventure after being caught eavesdropping by Gandalf. Peregrine Took, who usually goes by Pippin, is Frodo's youngest and most immature hobbit friend. He ends up joining Frodo on his adventure after he and Merry refuse to let him go alone. Meriadoc Brandybuck, known as Merry, is Frodo's oldest and most mature hobbit friend, and ends up adventuring with him after threatening him that he would follow him like a hound if he tried to leave without him. Strider is a ranger who leads the hobbits from Bree to Rivendell. They find out that his name is actually Aragorn, and that he is the heir to the throne. Legolas is the son of the Elf King of Mirkwood. He is a useful companion for his heightened senses and agility. Gimli is the son of a member of the party in Bilbo's adventures years ago. He is very stubborn and opinionated. Boromir is the son of the King of Gondor, who joined the group hoping to find help for his kingdom. There are many themes in the Fellowship of the Ring, but the most notable major themes that appear in the book are friendship, Christianity, fate, and power. Friendship is the most obvious theme in the book. The hobbits make friends with almost everyone they meet, even people who they actively try to avoid. Farmer Maggot, for example. Frodo had bad experiences with the farmer as a child, and he still had lingering fears years later. However, when he got the chance to sit down and have a meal with the farmer's family, he said this: "I have been in terror of you and your dogs for over 30 years, Farmer Maggot. Though you may laugh to hear it, it's a pity, for I've missed a good friend." The Fellowship is another example of friendship, specifically Legolas and Gimli. The Fellowship is made up of members from many free races, making for some serious cultural clashes, yet they are all able to have a bond with each other. Legolas and Gimli, an elf and a dwarf, 2 races which have a history of hating each other, become best friends. When Legolas spends over a month fangirling over Lothlorien, he shares his excitement with Gimli, and takes him to explore and experience the place separate from the rest of the company. Christianity symbols often appear in the book, but then books are not allegories. Tolkien was very vocal about his dislike for Christian allegories. There are, however, many symbols he intentionally and unintentionally added. The ring represents temptation and sin. Frodo symbolizes Jesus because his fate is to carry the burden of the ring alone, and destroy it in the fires of Mount Doom in order to save everyone despite being only immortal. Gandalf symbolizes Jesus through his death in his fight with the Balrog to save his company. The resurrection in later books on a horse in white robe, ready for battle, is just like the return of Jesus is described in Revelations. Aragorn symbolizes Jesus by being the king prophesied to return. If it weren't for fate, Frodo would not have been the one to take the ring on his journey. He asked almost every older and wiser person if they would be willing to take the ring instead. Frodo struggles with this for the majority of the book. It is also Aragorn's fate to be king, and Gandalf's fate, if thinking of him as a symbolism for Jesus, to die in order to save the company, but return to them again later. Everyone in the book wants or fears power. We see this through people's reactions to Frodo asking them to take the ring. Gandalf and Galadriel avoid the power because they know that if they had the ring, they would become too powerful and terrible. Bilbo and Boromir want the power desperately, but are able to conceal it unless put on the spot. Sauron is depending on the power of the ring to stay in existence. Frodo is continuously tempted by the power. The only 2 people who seem to be unaffected by the ring's power are Tom Bombadil, who also doesn't disappear when putting it on, and can see Frodo when he is invisible, and Elrond, who doesn't interact with it much, but when he does not react in the dramatic way Gandalf or Galadriel do.